If you spend any time in the YouTube comments or on Twitter or Reddit or basically anywhere where people are having conversations about the Monster Hunter series, you've seen the debate. World is better than Rise. Rise sucks because of reasons. Rise is a step backwards. And it gets pretty heated. I've been playing the series for well over a decade, and until recently have never seen such animosity and vitriol within the community over any preference-based topic. Sure, we've had our debates and differences, but in the end, we usually agree that any Monster Hunter is good Monster Hunter. For this one, it's different. There's a significant percentage of the fanbase who just can't stand Monster Hunter Rise, and they feel the need to tell us about it every chance they get. Now, before we get too far into this, I want to be perfectly clear. This video isn't about crapping on Monster Hunter World, or to justify why either Rise or World is the better game. In fact, that's not even the debate you predominantly see about the topic. What that discussion usually devolves into is something along the lines of this. Side A believes that Rise and World were both good entries and they have a preference for one or the other title. Side B believes that World is amazing, Rise is hot garbage, and Capcom took a huge step backwards in releasing such a terrible product. Now, how could such an asymmetrical argument even come about anyway? That's what I'm about to explore. So strap in and strap on. We're going for a ride. It's probably fair to say that most people who have played a Monster Hunter title got their start with Monster Hunter World. Take a look at this. Now, given sales figures like this, you'd have to make a lot of improbable assumptions to think otherwise. If you want to pause the video and work out the math for yourself, go ahead and do that. Okay, that wasn't too hard, right? And even if you are skeptical of using the word most, I think we can all agree that at least half of all current Monster Hunter fans got their start with World. And that fact has little to do with the actual design of the game. After all, we don't buy games based on intricate, detailed analysis of game design. We buy them because the marketing for the title convinced us that it was worth trying out. I think it's fair to say that the reason World was so popular is because of the massive intentional marketing campaign targeted at a global audience. This campaign did include special promotion from Sony. Now, marketing alone isn't enough. Your market has to be big enough. And the PlayStation 4, Xbox One install base combined to be over 100 million strong when World launched. And yes, the game was a solid one. It had the typical Capcom polish with great visual appeal and a rock-solid build. And the Monster Hunter team never fails to deliver a great product. This too contributed to the great sales reception. But Capcom has been very transparent about the fact that they were designing and marketing Monster Hunter World for a global audience. They were looking to get that Western crossover appeal with this title. One thing Capcom did for World was to change certain design, interface, and story elements of the game fairly radically from previous Monster Hunter versions, while keeping the same core gameplay. So these changes fall into two different categories. So the changes that Capcom made to World were either A, changes that would have happened as a natural evolution of the series, or they were B, changes that were implemented to appeal to Capcom's idea of what a Western audience would want from a video game. So when I say natural evolution of the series, here are some examples. Natural evolution changes would include a revamped armor skill system, no load screens between map areas, voice acting, we've been waiting a long time for that, wyvern riding. So these are all evolutionary changes to gameplay mechanics and features within the game, things you see most games do throughout the history of their series. So natural evolution changes would not necessarily lead to more new fans, since in making these changes, well, new fans had no idea what Monster Hunter was like before, and therefore they wouldn't think that these enhancements were anything special. They wouldn't feel like they're getting anything new over previous versions because they haven't played a previous version before. So the second category of changes, category B, Western appeal changes, would include things like this: a strong focus on the storyline, anonymized one-off matchmaking, Call of Duty style ranged weapons, camera hijacking moments, those little times where you're walking through part of the map and something important appears and your camera automatically swings around to look at it and you have no control over what's going on. Yeah, those. Quote unquote realism in the animations and visual design. So the monster's movements were more deliberate, more fluid, more seemingly realistic, as if they were trying to model the actual physics that a creature that big would have. And realism in the visual design, so more muted color palettes, environments that are just way overdeveloped in terms of the plant life and the water and in the map design in general. All right, spoon-feeding HUD elements, like having a big arrow show up in the middle of the screen telling you what direction to go in, so you don't have to think at all. Tons of messages popping up for everything all the time, and then tutorial messages popping up and interfering. Massive environmental visual clutter. This is kind of like the realism thing. Just tons and tons of trees and bushes and grass everywhere and rocks and unlevel terrain, just to make it look more realistic. Okay, easy mode game features. So we had mantles introduced into the game to make the game a lot easier. Easy mode armor and weapons. And yeah, there were weapon trees and armors introduced that made you way too powerful in the beginning of the game. All right, what else are Western appeal changes? Cluttered animated menus and visual elements. You know what I'm talking about there. Yes, you can click to fast forward through those menus, but basically all your menus are animated when they pop up. Zooming in on the quest board is animated. All right, and then the final one on my list here, although there are dozens more, a particular NPC in World who got a little too involved with the storyline and kept taking credit for everything that the player did. Yeah, some of these I didn't really like, but regardless of whether I liked them or not, they were changes that Capcom introduced intentionally. These are all changes that would appeal to new fans because they bring Monster Hunter in line with what other popular video games are doing in terms of gameplay, interface design, and storytelling. In fact, it was Capcom's stated goal to appeal to a non-Japanese audience by implementing these specific changes. Even though some of the Monster Hunter titles were very successful outside of Japan, the majority of the fan base was still Japanese. Even though they made all those changes, they still kept the game at its core a true Monster Hunter game, which is why people who have played previous Monster Hunter games can still appreciate World as a Monster Hunter game. So what's the result of the westernization of these design elements? Well, the direct result is that most gamers who consider themselves Monster Hunter fans are fans of World. They're not fans of Monster Hunter. That is to say, they're fans of Western game elements, not necessarily Monster Hunter itself. And so the result of that is you start to see a rift in the fan base between those people who appreciate the uniqueness of the series and those people who think it's supposed to be a AAA Western game experience. You see a rift between people who understand that the series does evolve over time and those who think each new entry in the series should be more of the same, with only subtle refinements, just like they're used to getting from other game series like Call of Duty and FIFA. So when a Monster Hunter title deviates from these norms with these familiar westernized design elements, a good portion of the Monster Hunter fan base will end up feeling like Capcom is getting it wrong, like they're taking a step backward. They see Rise, which is actually a much better reflection of the Monster Hunter experience over the last 15 years. They see Rise as a failure. They see the differences between World and Rise as merely a result of the limitations of the Switch platform. Even though Rise uses a far more modern, more capable, more up-to-date game engine, and does things that World could never do with its outdated MT framework. Even though the next Monster Hunter title, Monster Hunter 6 or World 2 as these fans like to call it, will use the very same game engine that Rise is running on right now. In many other ways though, this phrase taking a step backward is more appropriate than you might realize. For example, Rise is definitely a step backward, quote unquote, in terms of getting back to what Monster Hunter has always been, before World showed up that is. Backward in terms of getting in touch with its roots and incorporating elements that Monster Hunter pioneered and that make Monster Hunter unique among other games. Elements that define an entire genre of video games. Now that doesn't mean that it's stagnating. On the contrary, Rise kept the natural evolution changes and pioneered even more amazing things. Fully traversable maps. Take a minute to let that sink in. Go back to World and run around the perimeter of the map. Mark out all the spots you can actually walk on and compare that to what you can do in Rise. Extensive gameplay and weapon mechanics. Unique armor skills. Streamlined quest menus and lots of quality of life improvements. And so much more. Now, those of us who've experienced multiple versions of Monster Hunter realize that every new version will always be something very different and unique within the series, and we get excited about that. We look forward to it. We revel in it. Each new version may not be our favorite. After all, for most people, their first Monster Hunter is their favorite Monster Hunter. That's just how our human brains work. But we know each new title will be a great experience because we're used to the Monster Hunter developers taking the time to develop an entirely new title rather than offering the same game as last year, but with minor cosmetic differences. But the World generation of fans, the ones who got their start on the fully westernized game design, not all of them to be sure, but the vast majority of them are different. They didn't get thrust into the quirkiness of a traditional Monster Hunter game. They didn't get a fully Monster Hunter experience. Their expectations were set based on a very particular non-Monster Hunter design philosophy. One that's more in line with what they're used to from other game series. One that allows them to experience Monster Hunter through that lens and not have to engage with the core gameplay that makes Monster Hunter Monster Hunter. So when a new version of a game comes out, these types of fans expect more of the same. They're not fully prepared for major changes that come with each new Monster Hunter title. And then they feel disappointed when those major changes do come and take them out of their comfort zone. And this is what I believe forms the basis for the majority of complaints about the successor to World, Monster Hunter Rise. Nearly all of the criticism you'll hear can boil down to one simple sentence. 3 little words. It's not World. World did it better. World did it differently. World. Where is World 2? If you've been wondering why you're hearing this so often from so many people, now you know why. Most Monster Hunter fans got their expectations set by a fully westernized Monster Hunter title, and they expected Rise to be more of the same. And after playing a thoroughly Monster Hunter, they're disappointed. So what does the future hold? Kaname is in charge of the next Monster Hunter. The man who invented Monster Hunter and defined what it means to be Monster Hunter was told to westernize his previous creation. Given the current circumstances, will he feel forced by Capcom corporate to continue down this path and release more of the same? Or will he make the game that is true to his heart? He's already designed 5 different Monster Hunter titles, each one being radically different from the next. If he makes the Monster Hunter that he wants, he might feel like he's alienating his newfound player base. He's in a tough spot. Will he even want to continue making Monster Hunter titles given this situation? But is he even in charge of the next Monster Hunter title, though? We don't even know at this point. What I do know, however, is that I'll play it, and so will you, no matter which type of fan you are. The old school fans will play it because we enjoy the excitement of new Monster Hunter yet to come. And the world fans will play it because they've hyped it up amongst themselves as the next true version of Monster Hunter. But I'm going to call it right now. The next Monster Hunter title will be very different from both Rise and World. And a lot of you will still be disappointed because it's not World. It's not World. That's okay, but you've officially been warned. For the record, I thoroughly enjoyed World, and I think it's a solid Monster Hunter game. I like some of the new changes, and I didn't care for some of the others. I played it way too much. I enjoyed it, and it felt like Monster Hunter to me. I love both games, and a lot of you do too. Even many of you who did get your start with World. So now it's up to you. You guys are the single best YouTube community out there, period. Not just Monster Hunter community, but YouTube community. I've gotten more dissertations and 1,000-word essays written in the comments of my videos than I've seen on any other channel in existence. So I expect more of that. And no, they don't all support my argument. In fact, most of them are disagreeing with me. Yeah, I read every single one. These are the types of comments that I love to read. If you're putting the time in to type hundreds of words, sometimes it's thousands of words, I'm going to read that. So, like the video if you liked it, dislike the video if you hated it, or toss a coin and pick one. Leave your comment. Tell me your experiences with all this mess. Tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me I'm completely wrong. It's a discussion that we need to have, for sure.